we are now on the cusp of moving from experience management to experience creation, I think is the next precipice of transformation, not only in the digital space, but the next evolution of what we consider customer experience management.
AI is a tool. It's not necessarily going to replace leadership or strategy, but it can help amplify clarity.
AI in its best form only does what we train and guide it to do. We're not in a world where it's thinking for itself yet. But for now, it's here to help us be our best selves.
If you're ready to stop wasting time on fluff and instead learn how to build unstoppable teams, future-proof your career, and lead with clarity under pressure, then you, my friends, are in the right place. Let's dive in.
Companies who lose in this era are not the ones who fall behind on AI. They're the ones who forget that customers don't care about your tech. They care about the experience. And if your growth and product strategy is not built for that, you may already be obsolete. Welcome back to the Infinite Leaders podcast, where we explore what it really takes to lead in the age of disruption. Today's guest is a pioneer at the intersection of customer experience, AI, and digital transformation. Michael Mallett is Vice President of Digital Go-to-Market Strategy and the Center of Excellence at Medallia, one of the most trusted names in customer and employee experience worldwide. Over his 15-year career, he's influenced more than 1,000 clients, founded Medallia's digital practice, built its award-winning alliance with Adobe, and most recently led the company's first generative AI offerings. But what I love most is that Michael doesn't just talk tech, he lives customer obsession. From designing orchestration programs to scaling personalization at enterprise speed, his mantra is clear. Product and technology exist to solve business and customer problems. Michael, welcome to the show. I am so glad that you're here.
Sonja, thank you so much for the kind introduction. I'm really glad to be here and excited for our discussion today.
I want to jump right in here because you helped launch Medallia's first generative AI offerings. So where do you see AI accelerating go-to-market, product strategy, marketing strategy? Like, where do you think that leaders should be paying attention to, and where should they be resisting the hype?
I think it's a fantastic question. And obviously, everyone is thinking about the exact same thing. And we read about that in the news in terms of all of the pilots and concepts going on. I think there's a few key areas that come to mind. One, AI can help you find stories in your data that you weren't able to otherwise find. And what I mean by that is you are already sitting on an interactional data source that's rich in what behaviors customers are doing or not doing, what they're saying and where they're saying it. For example, on phone calls that don't often get analyzed for customer experience purposes and acted on. And yes, old school surveys, all of it is fair game, that social, all of these interactions. AI can actually help you find the pattern across these stories and tell you actually have a trending issue. So I think that's one of the areas where it can help you with discovery around how to understand and act on the experience. Another area that it can very much help in is actually leveling the playing field on how to interpret what you find. So it used to be that only the experts and practitioners and those with the data science and PhD in math could actually tell you what some of this information means. Now, thanks to AI, we can actually help the average person understand we not only have a trend, here's what that means, and here's potentially a recommended action to take. And the other really, really great thing that AI can now help us do, although it's just emerging and most are still practicing, is that AI can actually help us automatically, dynamically create the content and deliver it. So the fact that we are now on the cusp of moving from experience management to experience creation, I think is the next precipice of transformation, not only in the digital space, but the next evolution of what we consider customer experience management.
That is so good. And as it pertains to leaders and how leaders can be engaging with AI and thinking about how it might inform their strategy, I think that AI is a tool. It's not necessarily going to replace leadership or strategy, but it can help amplify clarity. And then you can have greater transformation in much faster motion. We can go at a more rapid speed.
Well, we not only feel that way at Medallia, but I feel that way as well. I know that there's the hype and fear that AI is here to take our jobs, but AI in its best form only does what we train and guide it to do. We're not in a world where it's thinking for itself yet. So we'll have a different conversation when that moment hits. The debate is 3 years, 5 years, doesn't matter. But for now, it's here to help us be our best selves. So if we just think about the very common example is you just had an experience at a hotel. And maybe you had a negative one at that, and you were kind enough to let the hotel know about that. Many aren't anymore. They just go about their business and never come back. So in this case, it might tell you, well, now the average human looking at that, who was an employee at that hotel, they want to do something in that scenario, and they might give the best response to that scenario of all time, not only in how they frame it, but also how they follow the operational playbook. And then there are those moments where maybe we get distracted. Then there are those moments where certain other employees are earlier in their life cycle at this company. They might need more training and more scenario guidance. Any sort of thing can happen. But with AI, you can actually level the understanding of that scenario. You can provide the best handling on that. You can help the average employee dynamically create a response to that scenario that not only aligns with what the business would want, but it's what the customer wants and expects too. One that they feel is very personalized based on what they shared and takes into account who they are, their entire brand history. So that's one of our applications. We call it Smart Response at Medallia. And in one of our customers, it reduced time to respond by 80%, which if you extrapolate that off of all the locations that they manage, we're talking about a time savings of years, time savings that can go back to other innovations, other operational training, and more guest to employee experiences, which is exactly what a company like Medallia and others are.
Yeah, that's so good. So, a common concern or a fear that I often hear is that AI is taking away the personal touch. But what I hear you saying is that it's actually contributing to a greater customer experience and, faster time responses as well.
Yes, and it should take into context on things. It's hard for the average person to remember what someone said yesterday. I think our attention span has gone down to seconds. Yes, it brings to us, information of the past, the present, and in the digital world, because we are actually able to see all the interactions in real time, we can actually process what they mean in real time and then recommend an action and potentially even automatically trigger it without you even leaving the channel. If you need help, chat should come to you, not you to it. But in reality, because of AI and the way marketing technology works together, they should know who I am. They should know that I've done repeat searches around mortgages. And then the entire pages of content on the website that they have should have changed to orchestrate that experience for me. Thanks to AI, this was already happening. Now it can happen more frequently with more accuracy. And that means more people can get the more personal experience they've always wanted.
So a more personal experience, but also a more automated experience, which may actually be taking over jobs that people were originally doing.
Are you the leader that your company cannot afford to lose? Or are you the one that they quietly replace during the next reorg? AI, layoffs, and shrinking budgets don't just take down low performers. Even top leaders get cut if they're not seen as indispensable. And that is why I created the Executive Edge Audit, a fast, powerful diagnostic for high performers like you that will give you your irreplaceability index, showing you where you stand and what's at risk so that you can prove your value before someone questions it. You'll also receive an executive risk report that allows you to pinpoint blind spots, strengths, and vulnerabilities so you can close gaps before they cost you a promotion. And finally, you'll receive a 6-month performance accelerator plan, complete with a boss-ready case for why your org should approve budget for your continued growth. So don't wait. Head on over to infiniteleaders.vip right now.
So how do you see that this is shifting the future of the workforce?
Well, I think there needs to be a balancing act. So
The way that it should start is they'll take the mundane activities for the employee and also the repeated activities from the customer. Those sorts of things should become automated because they should move faster. Faster for the customer means the employees can innovate and do something else that is complex, and it means higher lift for business results. But there's all sorts of moments where it's too complex. The scenario handling is unclear. We are not exactly sure what to do for this person at this time. What's their preference? And then there are moments where there are tons of people who still prefer things in person, over the phone. It's not just dependent on their age demographic. Younger people prefer this too, depending on the scenario and depending on how important it is for them to get something done right, well, and completely. So that's where the balancing act comes in. I believe the parts that should be automated are things that should have probably long been automated many years ago. And the parts that should keep the human touch are the ones where creativity is required, where some decision-making, where it is not safe to codify that yet because the decision-making routes are unclear or it's too complex to codify.
And what advice do you have for senior executives and HR leaders that are planning for the future of the workforce? What skill development do you think that professionals should be focused on developing to remain relevant in this new world that we're all living in now?
I'm glad you asked because that's one of the major gaps we have on the technology deployments out there in the world. The tech is far surpassed our enablement on it. Number one advice, even before enablement, when we're taking these internal transformation projects or these employee augmentation and assistant projects, I think it's just really important to keep in mind what is the business purpose and what are the user workflows, the customer or employee workflows we're trying to enhance. What is a successful outcome? The reason why a lot of the projects unfortunately fail is, at least what we hear in anecdote and what I read in the space, is it was more of a technical test without a true purpose. So keeping in mind that, hey, if we launch an internal assistant, what it should do is it should help you answer these questions faster and it should help you deliver the experience. We're looking for productivity, time savings, but not just that. We're looking for revenue growth because what that means for you is you're not just handling things on fire, you're opening up creative cross-sell, upsell, and suggestion opportunities that the customers are going to love because they were actually in the market for that. And what helped us remember that? Our marketing technologies, our CRM, and our AI. But when it comes to app skills and enablement, on that part of the question, assuming we get past go on that, that's where live training, self-service courses, actual step walkthroughs. I remember when I first started my career almost 11 years ago in technology, I knew research, I knew consulting, but I didn't know sales, I didn't know technology, and believe it or not, I actually didn't understand digital experience as a practice either. I had to learn that. So through the patience of mentors, through demonstrations and simulations and practice, I actually didn't just teach myself. I had people who gave me the time for live walkthroughs and told me how something works and told me how to apply it in my day-to-day. It felt very easy to adapt that. It's here. It's very helpful. It's not going to replace us. But how do I use it so that everybody wins?
So you mentioned that, a lot of the sticking points are really, it's not the technology itself, it's in the implementation of the technology and getting things out there faster to market as quickly as possible. So if you were to dig into that a little bit further, like when you've worked with senior level executive teams, all teams inside of the organization, what have you seen as principles or guidelines for super helpful execution versus not so great execution? Like, what are the sticking points and how can we all do this in a faster, more effective way?
Well, it's key to consider the information at your fingertips today. So if we're thinking about assistants and agents, they live in digital channels, which means you already have product analytics, application monitoring analytics, behavioral analytics, feedback, text analytics, support tickets. You have all sorts of analytics about what's been working in that technology or that website, mobile app, application experience. And I think making sure to know what that is and why you want to introduce the assistant and agent, that is important. And if you don't have those technology offering, a company like Medallia that I work for absolutely can help. Another key step is in the ideation and design process. In my years in product strategy, when I've seen product deployments and adoption stories go really well, same for clients, is when they actually incorporate the business users whom they're trying to serve as customers, or customers as they're trying to serve as customers, as part of the ideation process. That means you want to use a fast prototyping solution so that we can have something to look at, play with, and talk about. But you also want to have those focus groups, those user research. In internal forums, these are your employees who very much want all the help in the world to stop doing things that, even they consider as monotonous, and they have better things to do, as you ask them all of the time: move faster, do more with less. Well, okay. So they are actually your experts, not only on your tools and your systems, but your processes. And by the way, they actually probably know the customer just as well, and sometimes better than the customers know themselves. Customers aren't always able to articulate what they really mean when they share how they feel about your brand. Employees have a very, very critical perspective into that. So include them in the ideation process. Include them in actual user story validation and simulation. Would this work for you if you actually had this? Yes? No? Why not? What would you prefer differently? Do that before you lock it in, because the worst thing you can do is ship a product that didn't take that into account beforehand, and then everyone spikes in using it, and then you see no one using it after 30, 60 days. Don't set it and forget it. Just because you launched it once, don't assume that that's it. Actually, no, you're going to find new enhancements, new questions or prompts that it can't handle, new use cases it can't cover, new data sources it can't cover, and change your success criteria for a phased success criteria. It's not a failure if it didn't do everything at once. No one can do everything all at once. Innovation is a continuous process. It never ends. It's one of the beauty and curses of the technology space and what we all need to do in the business world. And if we just flip our minds to it's okay, and it's also okay to fail, but it's also okay to collaborate, and it's going to work out as long as we keep our principles, our mission, and the customer and the employees at the center of what we're doing and why we're doing it. I promise that it's going to work out much more often than not, and all brands will see their lift go up from there.
Well, so in an innovation-centric environment, what are some of the key tenets that you advise leaders on how to create an innovative culture? What might be some of the challenges, right? Because you just mentioned, it's an iterative process. So you launch, maybe it feels like it failed, but maybe it didn't actually fail. There was just some key tweaks that needed to be made. And in my experience, having worked with teams, sometimes there can be that black and white thinking, like, we launched this and it failed, right? And then a leader's response to that and how they guide the team through the next steps, I think really matters. So what advice might you have for organizations who are going through these challenges where they launch something and maybe they didn't quite meet their goals or their metrics, or they're seeing it feels like failure, but maybe with some initial tweaks, it might actually do the trick. How do you create an innovation-centric culture that actually works, where everyone is enrolled in that and can actually be a part of that collaboration process?
I can think of a few things that I've seen work. One is create a cross-functional pod or champion framework where you have business, you have operations, you have IT. You have folks that obviously they've been around the block, but even if not, someone who's a new employee that's also hungry to learn and hungry to help and in the right place, even they should be welcome on certainly some of these teams, because they have a valid perspective. If it can work for a brand new employee, it can work for all employees, just like it can work for new customers, just like existing customers. So I think you have to create that cross-functional ideation pod. And of course, someone has to keep them on task towards a business objective. That's where we have to have an overarching business objective. What are we trying to achieve? Are we trying to achieve growth? Lately, a lot of the stories have seen a convergence between customer experience and customer service. They're not exactly the same, but they're highly related. But not everything as an AI or a program deployment in the experience space is about cutting costs. That's just the recent news events of tariffs and pressures on companies. There's all sorts of things. We have businesses that try to increase their loyalty. We have businesses that look at how they can deploy AI to take the customers they already have and use them for social activation and promotion so they can organically grow by attracting other customers like them. So there needs to be a business objective to aim to. A cross-functional pod makes sure that you consider all different business unit perspectives, but also different employee perspectives. Different customer perspectives, just in case you cannot do the direct research with customers. Though I highly encourage product innovation and user research with certain customers. I think the other thing to think about is you have to have an outside-in approach. Very commonly, certainly in technology, but even our best of the best clients, there's a difference between a hypothesis that very, very much may be right, but a fully validated hypothesis, and one that is also comprehensive. We may launch something and it may be partially great and even delightful, but it may not cover the entire market need. So we have to look outside of our walls, not only if I'm speaking to an executive, say, of a financial services company, not just outside of your company to what other brands are doing in your sector, but what is retail doing? What is hospitality doing? You all have something to learn from each other. And why does that matter? We are all customers of these brands. So to us, we all expect the same kind of experience, no matter which brand we're engaging with. And that goes the same for B2B business models as consumer models. So those are the three things that I think come to mind. And then maybe, the fourth thing that comes to mind is make sure you have an investment bucket for pilots, for fails. That is not something that's often set aside. And so everyone is activating against, budgets that are too tight and running the business. And innovation will never beat running the business. So that actually has to be a concentrated top-down. We are going to set time and money and priorities aside for this. It is actually connected to our priorities. It's not separate. So those are some things that come to mind, but obviously creating that culture and then managing up is incredibly difficult. And the only other thing I can think about is, if there's one thing you take away from everything I shared, it's keep the emotional part at the core. When, for example, one of our customers in the healthcare space deployed feedback via mobile application and video feedback, they actually shared a response live on stage about how someone got personal healthcare. Their wife's life was saved based on how personally this company's operations and the employees handled that moment. And that person was so moved, they shared a moving video sharing their story. And this brand was kind enough to share that with other brands in the room. How many pieces of video feedback did they get in their program? Probably not a lot. But that one video paid in an ROI that's not just dollars, it's emotional impact, it's employee activation, it's brand mission alignment, it's impact of that brand on other brands in the Medallia portfolio and what they do for the space. That company did such a nice thing by sharing that with all of us. But they did an amazing thing by sharing that with their employees as well, to just show them there is an emotional reason why we all go to work and we make a difference. And so I think these innovation projects, even if they're imperfect on all the stats, if they unlocked those emotional insights on a one-to-one basis and they change the story for people, that is still a success and should very much be celebrated, while then pivoting on how do we also drive the business impact too? Because that will always come.
Never underestimate the power of a good story. Sometimes the stories outweigh any metrics that might be involved as part of a project. Although the metrics definitely matter, but stories is really what activates that emotion and brings us in as a person and helps us care about a brand.
Change only happens as a movement. And to ignite that movement, people have to feel like they're heard, they can make a difference. And you have to share back to them the difference that they have made.
So well said. So well said. So on the topic of storytelling, I'm going to shift gears a little bit, and I'd love for you to share a personal story. So I learned from you, Michael, that you once sang with Hanson, the Boston Pops, and even at the Vatican without even being able to read music. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about your experience there, and maybe connecting the dots, what did your experience teach you about confidence and adaptability in leadership?
Somehow I got conscripted to be Santa Claus in a third grade play, but I got the bug and I became a bit of a drama geek and nerd. When you're in an all boys high school, someone needs to sing too. So they're going to ask you that. And I actually come from a long family history of singers, drummers, opera singers. So we have the gene. So that certainly was a help. But when you go through all this practice, you end up learning it backwards. So yeah, I still cannot read music to this day. You just through repetition, listening to CDs, listening to yourself, which I do not enjoy. You do all of that, and the next thing you know, you're repeating that sound as you wanted it in practice, and potentially pitch perfect. So one of these days, we were just out in the middle of New York, and because we're really cool kids, we dared someone to sing in public. And the next thing you know, Hanson comes out of the subway, they break into Mbop, and we lost the picture on a flip phone, but that's how I met them. They invited us to their concert. We invited them to our show. Nobody went to anything, but it is a really fun story. And so I just stuck with it. And I think what it taught me is that it taught me stage presence. It taught me practicing. It taught me storytelling. It taught me how to connect with your audience. It is something that I have seen some of the smartest people I have ever met, but because they're not talking to a wall or they didn't have the same opportunities as I did, they're not as comfortable sharing. So that's just something that I think that AI can very much help, not only on helping you prepare the notes and prepare the talk track, like how to tell a great story, but then don't underestimate the power of just talking to a wall. Just practice, because some of the greatest ideas of all time, if they weren't told by the greatest storytellers of all time, we may be living in a different world than we are now. That's where, to me, it all connects in terms of storytelling.
A lot of times leaders and professionals will over-index on mastery or perfection or having all of the details dialed in before they even step out. But I see the real differentiator is adaptability. And if you can step on a stage without sheet music or knowing how to read music, I certainly believe that, you can step in front of a room full of executives or go into the boardroom without having all the answers. If you just have that inherent trust in yourself and the ability to tell good stories and the ability to really genuinely, authentically connect with people.
Gartner actually shared, in terms of storytelling, I think something like only 20% of data and analytics professionals and even leaders are good at storytelling. Storytelling makes all the difference in terms of driving change.
It sure does. Man, I have attended so many trainings on storytelling, and it truly is a skill and a craft. Well, Michael, what's next for you?
Well, what's next is a couple of things. So we're really excited over on the Medallia side as we have a couple of different release announcements coming out in terms of our fall release. We also are really excited that we are having our experience conference in February. I am also proud to be working on some of our advanced agentic AI projects. We recently announced an expanded partnership with Adobe. So if anyone is out there, they're a Medallia customer, Medallia prospect, please reach out to me in terms of that. If you're interested on how do you create audiences and content with AI using customer and digital experience data. So those are some of the things next on my horizon in terms of, work projects and personal projects. I love the fall. So this is where there are leaves. I get to go outside with a little bit of chill in the air. There's a little bit of baking of pies. Usually my wife does the baking and I do the eating. I do the cooking and she does the eating. So
I like that.
It's a wonderful balance in our relationship. And so, just really excited to explore a newly married life, only a year and a half. So still honeymoon phase-ish. And so that's what's up for me next.
Well, congratulations on your newlywed status. And thank you so much for being on the show. Where can our listeners find out more about you?
Well, you can friend me on LinkedIn. Do sometimes have local regional events in New York City with Medallia, so that is great. But reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to help in any way that I can on whatever journey that you are on. And certainly, when this podcast comes out, you can learn a little bit more about me on this. You'll also see me around in terms of other announcements and webinars and podcasts as well. So
wonderful, wonderful. Well, thank you for sharing your wisdom with our listeners. We'll put all the links in the show notes and stay tuned for more. Thank you, Michael, for being on the show.
Thanks again for having me.
Thank you for joining us for another game-changing episode of the Infinite Leaders podcast. Remember, Leadership is not about slogans and one-off events. It's about strategic operating systems, sustainable rhythms, and real results. If today's conversation gave you a spark, do not let it fade. Whether you're navigating change, breaking through organizational roadblocks, or building high-performing teams, take the next step with the Infinite Edge Audit, a low-investment, corporate card-friendly plan to future-proof your career and fast-track your next professional move. Need support for your team? Well, we do that too. We empower leadership development that delivers measurable results, team alignment that breaks down silos, and organizational results that actually stick. So head on over to infiniteleaders.vip right now. That's infiniteleaders.vip.